Hello, and welcome to the latest presentation of the Rift Valley webinar series. My name is Martha Booker Johnson, and I am the host for today's talk. If you are participating in the live webinar, you can submit questions or comments in the chat module of the Zoom application at any time during the presentation, or ask a voice question by raising your hand once the presentation is complete. Today's speaker is Cecilia Mignanti. Cecilia is a PhD candidate at the University of Pavia. Her interests include cultural anthropology and anthropological linguistics in East Africa. Please join me in welcoming Cecilia as she presents an overview of Arusa Maa visual semantics, cattle culture, environment, and innovations.
Thank you for being here today, and I am Cecilia Mignanti, and I will talk about some of the data that I'm collecting for my PhD research on Arusa Maa visual semantics. So I will present you how Arusa Maasai talk about their visual experience. So we will talk about color terms, pattern terms, and during the presentation, we will see how the cattle culture, the environment, and also some innovations that are entering in the language through Maasai art crafts, especially through crafting activities that are made by women. So how these domains also influence these semantics. So this is a brief roadmap of the presentation, and please also feel free to interrupt me whenever you want if you need any clarification, and I will be very happy to answer your questions. So I will briefly introduce the research topic, and then I will move really fast to the methodology for the data collection. I will briefly introduce the language and the social context. Then I will explain why I'm talking about visual semantics instead of color semantics. And then we will move to some of the first results from my research. So how Arusa speakers talk about the visual world. And I will talk about property concept terms that are stative verbs and adjectives for colors and pattern terms, some complex constructions, and part of the technical vocabulary that is used by women to talk about their crafting activities. And then we will have time for some discussion, I hope, and conclusions. I started to study cattle color terms, so the terms that are used for talking about colors and pattern in Maasai, because I was interested when I went into literature about cattle color terms, because in literature is shown that in some pastoral cultures, the livestock model plays a central role in the visual system. And in some East African pastoral societies, color and pattern terms are strictly related to cattle appearance. And also by literature, it is shown that there are language-specific tendencies for color and pattern categorization. And also something that is really interesting, I think, also in the contemporary reality where we live, is that we are facing really fast social changes, and this kind of study can give us salient information about the history of pastoral societies and their relation with the environment. We will move more to discussion about the data today, but I would like also to briefly introduce the methodology that I used for my research. So I'm trying to study the relation between language, culture, and environment. And for doing so, I did 2 fieldworks in Tanzania, and in the following slide, I will show you the area where I did my fieldwork, and I spent 6 months in Ilkurot, in the northern area of Tanzania, northern Arusha. And I use a multi-method approach for collecting data. So I used ethnography. I lived for these 6 months in a Maasai village with an Arusa Maasai family who hosted me. And within this village, I did stimulus-based tasks. So I listed here the tasks that were the free listing task, the color chip naming task, the pattern naming task, and the coloring task. And then I used also, I made some focus groups. I recorded some spontaneous speech and staged speech. And I also used some translation tasks. At the end of the last fieldwork, I collected 139 interviews with 48 speakers, 18 women and 30 men of different ages, and I used Zoom for audio recording and a Sony camera for videos and pictures, and I recorded 66 hours of audio recordings. As I'm a beginner of Maasai, but I'm quite fluent in Kiswahili, I used Kiswahili as the vehicular language for the research. So, Arusa Maa is a variety of Maasai. Maa is an Eastern Nilotic language that belongs to the Nilo-Saharan language family. Maa counts nowadays 1,872,000 speakers between Kenya and Tanzania. And Maa is divided into 3 major groups according to their geographical distribution. So Doris Spain divides Maa into a Northern Maa, where we can find the Samburu and Kamus dialect of Kenya. Then the Central Maa, where are grouped the Southern Kenyan Maa varieties. And then within the Southern Maa variety, we find the Tanzanian varieties. And Arusa Maa is a variety of Southern Maa, so it's a variety of Maa that is spoken in northern Tanzania, in the area of Arusha and Meru, and it counts nowadays 110,000 speakers. Where you see the lines or the arrows, I don't know what is better to say, is where I did my fieldwork. So it's in this area we can point Ilkurot. And in Tanzania, and in the case of the little village of Ilkurot, people are usually bilingual Maasai Kiswahili, so they speak Maa in the daily life communication within the community. And Kiswahili is the language of primary education. And so there is a strong contact situation with Kiswahili and also with English. And this leads to heavy borrowings in the lexicon that are also observable in the lexicon used for colors and patterns. And we will see some examples. So Arusa Maasai derived their name they refer, to their language as Enkutuk or Larusa, so the language of the Arusa. And Ilarusa derive their name from an adjective that is Arus, and this adjective is prototypically related to the description of cattle codes. As you can see in this picture, this is a cow, which is Arus, and the Arus means usually black and white that are mixing together on a surface. And here is an example of the use of the adjective arus. So, enyaiten kiteng arus or kujita, the mixed color cow is eating the grass. And by using this term, Arusa Maasai people express their mixed identity of pastoral people who also acquired the farming activities from Bantu tradition. So this is the etymology of the name Arusa, and I think it's interesting to talk about it also because of the topic of the presentation of today. But even if Arusa Maasai acquired farming activities, pastoralism is the main activity within the society, and we can say that within the Arusa Maasai society, cattle is a cultural theme. So livestock, imasan, that groups cattle, sheep, and goats, is the first source of income within the society, and also having livestock is a way to show power within the societies. In every rituals, livestock is there, and if the ritual is really important, cattle is always there, so is the favorite animal within the Arusa society. And also there is a genre of the orality that is related to cows, that is the songs and the dances of the cows that are called Osingolio Loingishu. And within these songs, men usually sing about their cows, their favorite cows, but also about the important phases of their lives, as well as the contemporary society. And I think they're really interesting to analyze. And then relating to the cattle as a cultural theme, there are also naming practices for human beings that are based on livestock exchange. So, for example, a married man who gave a cow to the family of his wife acquires the name of Pa Kiteng. Kiteng means cow, and Pa is a prefix that expresses a close relation within the societies. And so, for example, Pa Kiteng is the married man, so the one who gave a cow to the wife's family. And then also there are naming practices for cattle. So all cattle within a family have their personal name, and this is restricted to cattle. So is not so goats and sheep don't have their personal name, and these names are given by women who are the one who milk the cows within the kraal. And so for calling their cows, they use their personal names, and children are socialized into the cattle culture into pastoral activities since they are really young. And if you go to the herding areas, you can find some games, as you can see in these pictures, where there are enclosures for the animals that are built with little stones by young children, and who play with other little stones or little pebbles, and they call their animals while they play, or they start to acquire the names of, for example, of the colors or of the patterns that the animals can show on their coats. And of course, related to the presentation of today, there is a lexical elaboration for describing livestock appearance. And this is really rooted to the Maasai culture, because Maasai pastoralists reveal an impressive ability in recognizing and identifying their animals, and such perception of livestock depends on the recognition of visual and behavioral features. So, for example, here is a transcription of a spontaneous speech where three men were talking about a lost animal, a lost cow. And the first thing that a friend of the man who lost his cow was related to the appearance of the animal, because this man wanted to help him in finding his animal. So the first thing he asked him was "Enkiteng naya," so how is the cow? How does the cow looks like? And then the man answered "Enkiteng nanyokie," so the cow, in this case, that is red. And then another important information about the important features to be recognized on of cattle and of livestock are the brandings. So the other man asked him "Kemishira," so does it have any brand mark? And then the man answers which kind of branding mark the cow has. In this case, the cow has one mark that is called Olengapet, that is one on the right ear, the one in the green circle, and the Mbunit, which is the other cut that is in the red circle in the picture. And the combination of different cuts on the ears are related to a specific clan that inhabit the area. So, for example, this combination is the combination of the Mollel, so the clan of the Mollel. Okay, so let's go to discuss some of the findings, and I'm introducing here why I'm talking about visual semantics, and not about color semantics, because it was shown by Wierzbicka and then also by Goddard and Wierzbicka. In many, I mean, in some in languages that they studied, they found that there were not words for the concept of color, and they say that there can be no universals in how people habitually think and talk about color, given that in many languages people don't talk about color at all, but instead focus their attention on other aspects of what they see. So in their study, they underlined that in all cultures, people are interested in seeing and describing what they see, but they don't necessarily isolate color as a separate aspect of the visual experience. And what happens in Arusa Maa? In Arusa Maa, there is no word for the abstract concept of color. There is another word that is this noun, and that you can see here, that is émoi. And here I translated it as kind, type, appearance. And by using émoi, Arusa Maasai categorize usually cattle or people based on their pelts or skin appearance. So, for example, in the example that we saw here, the fourth, the first man could also ask, "Qu'est-moi un aquitaine?" So, which type of cow? And he could have get the same answer as here. And within the category of émoi, in Arusa, we find color terms, pattern terms, and terms that encode both a pattern plus a specific color or colors. And this is what in literature there is being called color plus design terms. And within my research, I collected 65 terms of émoi. Among these terms, 37 terms are related to the livestock coat appearance domain, while 28 terms are used for things outside the livestock appearance domain. So, for example, for plants, cattle products, artifacts, and body ornaments. I forgot to say that within the 37 terms that are related to the livestock coat appearance domain, they are not restricted to livestock appearance domain, but most of them, and we will see it more in detail, can be also extended to talk about other things than livestock appearance. And these terms are, here I'm using the definition by Schneider. So they are property concept terms, so stative verbs and adjectives. Stative verbs and adjectives share a similar semantics, but have different morphosyntactic behavior, and we will see some examples in the following slides. And then also for encoding patterns, Arusa Maa use nouns in complex expressions introduced by the genitive, but we will see them in a while. So this is the stative verbs that I listed during my research. Here they are listed in their infinitive form, so with the a, arok, aibor, ado, and agnokie. All these verbs have a wide referential range. So we have a term for black, arok, a term for white, two terms for red, and we will see them more in detail in a few seconds, and one term for GRU, so for green related to bright green, the green of bright vegetation during the wet season. And for GRU, when I did the color chip naming task, so when I asked people to name the color that they saw on card clipboards, some speakers described the cards by using the term gnori, also when they saw blue cards. But what's happening also more with the new generations is that some speakers distinguish artificial blue from green by using the loan word bulu from English, and yeah, it probably enters through contact with Kiswahili. So this is one of the two terms for red, that is gnocchie. Gnocchie is related to the appearance of the sky during the sunset or the sunrise, and can be used to refer to livestock coats that are completely red in appearance, and also it can be used for in relation to skin that are clear, like for example, in my case, I am gnocchie, so I'm an example of gnocchie. And for cattle, if just some body parts are red, then the other term do is used. So, for example, here I put an example of spontaneous speech. Here was a meeting of men. They were talking about the time of, I'm sorry, when they were talking about when they teach their children to recognize the different colors and patterns of cattle, of livestock in general. And so this man was saying, and I will show him the cattle and the livestock in general, until he will know to say this is a red cow. So ore enakiteng akenyokie. So as you can see here, this is the dative verb for nyokie, for be red, for the wool coat. And also, as this verb is really related to the clear skin, here we have the causative extension of prefixed in the verb itonyoke no entitoke on. So the girl made herself become red, the girl bleached herself. And here is the other term for red. It is prototypically related to the appearance of blood. And here is an idiomatic expression in example 7, edo en kong. It is said about someone who is really dangerous, so it is literally is the eye is red. And so he, like someone who has the blood in his eyes, as he is dangerous and he is really angry. And this term, as I was telling you before, is used to refer to red body parts of livestock. So as an example 8, enkine nadolu kunya eohitolodo, so the red-headed goat is screaming. And this is also the red that is used for objects in general. It's the red also of the red ochre. And here we can also, in the example 9, we have eto shoki, orangi, and kaji nedoru. So the color was applied and the house became red. So the inquative extent of doru. Here it is also interesting because there is the loan word from Kiswahili, rangi, for the meaning of color, with the proclitic of gender masculine, so masculine and singular, o rangi. So, and this generally when Arusa Maasai people want to refer to the concept of color, they usually use the loan word from Kiswahili, rangi. Okay. Let's move to adjectives. They in the data that I have, they are the majority. Adjectives usually encode colors or pattern plus specific color or colors. I collected 20 adjectives related to livestock appearance that can be also extended to other semantic domains. So, for example, other animals outside of the livestock domain, human skin, plants, landscape, human products, cattle products, artifacts. Then I collected 5 adjectives that are really restricted to livestock appearance. Like, for example, homo, that is one of the adjectives that are used for referring to brown hues. And the homo is restricted to sheep, is not goats. I made a mistake here. And seperua, that is pattern plus specific color term for that, which means ash gray, light brown, and white mixing together, but still visible separately. Pukoti, that is black and white mixing together, but still visible separately. Warikoi, that is the lightest shade of brown for cattle, sheep, and goats. And tarameut, that means light brown dotted. And then I listed 7 adjectives that are related to domains other than livestock appearance, that can be also related to the cattle culture, as for example, cattle products, but also to the domain of plants or beads. So there is a high lexical elaboration of mostly for the terms in the tan, brown, white, black, reddish, because there is a cultural reason to have this lexical elaboration, because these terms are psychologically salient within the community, and they are related to the cattle culture and the pastoral activities. And these terms are not known just by herders, but they are part of a shared vocabulary among genders and generations who inhabit the area. And this is because also mostly the terms that are used for referring to livestock appearance allow a cultural classification system that is based on language, and they are used for a communicative work, in this case, distinguishing animal in the herding area. So here, for example, is an example of some of these adjectives. In the first column, so where you see the pictures, these pictures were shot by me and by a young herder at Ilkurot, so in the place where I lived for the research, and also to a cattle market in Odoinho Sambu, which is northern than Ilkurot, and in Ngaramtoni, that is a bit southern, where there is another cattle market. And on the right side, we can see some of the drawings that were made by some herders during the coloring task, where I asked to a group of men to draw the appearance of cattle by using the terms that I collected, and this was really useful for understanding better the semantics of these terms. So, for example, in the column, in the left column, there are 3 terms for brown that are Warikoi, Ngiro, and Tulugumi. And for example, Ngiro, we can translate it as like light brown. And the one here is the speaker is saying in Swahili, imekolea kuliko warikoi, warikoi haijakolea. So Ngiro reached its peak of saturation, its peak of intensity. While warikoi, that is the one in the first line, is, according to the speaker, a mix of Ngiro, so the light brown, and white. So nyeupe imechanganyikana na Ngiro, lakini Ngiro rangi lake imekolea. So it's like white that is mixing with the Ngiro, but Ngiro, his color reached his maximum of saturation. And then we have Tulugumi, where we have where the speaker is saying hapa ni rangi mbili, nyeusi sio nyeusi, ngiro sio ngiro. So here there are 2 colors, black is not black, and ngiro is not ngiro. And also here we can we have some I put some examples of patterns, keri, tara, and pus. And here the distinction is more related to the size of the spots. So for Curie, it means the longitudinal distribution of spots of a medium size on a white coat. And if not specified, the Curie encodes 2 colors, black spots on a white surface. Then, for example, and then there is Tara, that is also a color plus pattern term. It means the longitudinal distribution of black dots on white surface. And these dots are smaller in size than the spots lexicalized by the term Curie, but they are bigger than the speckles that are lexicalized by the adjective pus. And here in the last line, there is the example of pus, that is also a color plus pattern term, which means white surface, black speckled. And the white surface is predominant, and the black speckles are small in size, and if not specified, the pus encodes 2 colors as well, white and black. Okay, and here is another example of adjective, and and this is an adjective that is used for one of the terms for gray, and that is usually used for livestock. And here we have the example, elepito mama enkiteng dere. So the mother is milking the gray cow. Dere can be also used to refer to other things outside the livestock domain. So, for example, dere is the color of the vervet monkey. And here what is interesting is the semantic mapping that we have in the nominalized form of dere. So dere is the adjective, and with the proclitic of gender, we have endere, which means the gray cow, the gray one, so the dere one. And so endere is vague in its meaning and can refer to the cow and the vervet monkey, both. And so we know by the context that, for example, in example 12, people are referring to the vervet monkey, because the vervet monkeys are the one who steal the corn in the farming area. So enyaita endere irpaek. So the gray one is eating the corn, and we know that people are referring to the vervet monkey. I would go here to another adjective that is used for color word for color term. And Sikito means yellow, is related to the appearance of the milk that is given by a cow after giving birth. So this kind of milk is called colostrum. And this milk has this color, as you can see in this glass. This term cannot be used to refer to livestock appearance. If livestock is yellow, there is another term that is used to refer to this appearance, while Sikito is also, it can be used to refer to objects and in general artifacts, and also to beads. So here we have the example 15, Aok kule sikito and giten. So I will drink the colostrum yellow milk of the cow. This is a part of Osingo Lyolengishu, so a song of the cows, the one that I was telling you before, that are part of the genre of the orality. Usually, Arusa Maasai people don't drink sikito because this milk is left for the calf. However, if young boys need more power, the sikito can be given to the young boys as a medicine. And that's why here we have this example of someone drinking the sikito. And also, as I was telling you, this sikito may be used to refer to colors of beads. So ishovo yeyo imustani sikito. And here we have another example that is not related to the cattle culture. This is an adjective that is shared within the technical vocabulary of women for meaning light blue hues. And this term is burtutu, and is used for light blue beads or for light blue on house walls, because the main crafting activities that are made by women in the area are bead ornament crafting and also mural decorations, where they use several and different colors. So here we have the example, etumora yeyo enkaji torangi burtutu. So the mother plastered the house with a light blue color. And this line of chips are in the last picture are is an example of the chips that were chosen by a woman as burtutu in the color chip naming task. And lastly, we have, as I was telling you before, complex expressions that are introduced by usually by the genitive, or that can occur preceded by have. For talking about livestock appearance, I collected 6 nouns that encode patterns. And then I also collected 19 nouns that belongs to the technical vocabulary of women to talk about designs on bead ornaments and house decorations. And they are used for colors and patterns as well. So here is an example of the term for stars, ilokir. Ilokir means stars. And here we have in example 18, emoyen kitengo ilokir, so the cow of the stars with this with the genitive construction is sick. In this case, the semantic mapping is from the shape of the stars in the sky is mapped on the cattle coat. So the cattle coat, the head that has few and small spots, are seen as small stars, so the cow of the stars. And however, different shape in production, I think, but this pattern is also used for bead ornaments. So, for example, here we have a mustai or lokir, so the bead ornaments of the stars. And as you can see, this pattern on the the blue and the light blue pattern on the orange bead ornament are described. According to women, are stars. And here the last examples about the technical vocabulary of women. Here is an example of the output of the pattern naming task, where I used some cards with this with some abstract drawings that were black and white or also colorful, and I asked speakers to describe the cards. And one woman described this card as a keibor neta indipitip narok. So it is white with little black spots. And the indipitip can be drawn both on the house walls, as you can see in these pictures, or also on bead ornaments, as you can see in the other picture, I hope, because they're really small, so it's a bit hard to see, but in the white bead ornament, there are small dots that are blue in color, and those are indipitip. And this term is really restricted to this semantic domain. Here is another example of the mortar. So this is a bead ornament with the mortars, etiriva emustai oincurini, which is encurini is probably a loan word from Kiswahili, kiuni. And here we have the shape of the mortar that you can see probably in the picture on the right side, that is drawn on the bead ornament, the one with the two triangles, the white one with the orange triangles and the green triangles. And here another example of the technical vocabulary of women, always from the pattern naming task. And here another woman described the picture 59 as akerok neta in boxy naibor. So it is black with white boxes, and emboxy is a loan word that is introduced from English, and it was incorporated into the Maasai grammar by the proclitic of gender. And it lexicalizes squared designs that are made on walls and bead ornament. So, final remarks before the questions. What I'm noticing until now is that Arusa Maasai visual semantics is a complex system which is related to the surrounding environment, the cattle culture, and subsistence activities. I think also by studying visual semantics of Arusa Maa is possible to show some gender variation in the lexicon, so we can there is a shared vocabulary that is related to the cattle culture and the technical vocabulary that is related to bead ornaments and house decoration. And also we can have some interesting findings on about contact, because as overall in within the study of the terms that are shared in the technical vocabulary of women, as some designs are the expression of innovative practices that result from the meeting of traditional Maasai crafts with the contemporaneity, there are pattern and color expressions that occur with nouns that are loanwords from Kiswahili and English as well. So, Ashenalen, thank you and grazie. Vediamo se riesco.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We can now begin the question and answer section. The question and answer section will be open to voice questions as well as written questions. If you would like to ask a question, just raise your hand in the nonverbal controls present underneath the participant panel, and I will call on you. If you prefer to ask a written question, that is also still possible. You can do so using the Zoom chat module, and I will read out the question. Please remember that the webinars are recorded so that if you ask a question, this will be part of the recording and will be released on the YouTube channel. Jeroen?
Yeah, thanks so much, Cecilia, for the talk.
I
I had a question. What do you think about the main differences between the Maasai system and the Hamar system? Since I think you're familiar with, with the Hamar system in working with Sarah, and also given that her paper is one of the main works on this topic. So have you noticed any stark differences between the systems?
So I can tell you that we will work on it in the next month. So yeah, because we will do a comparative work with Sarah and Gibrila. And so this is the next steps that we have. I think there are some similarities, but we have to do it. I mean, to have a better overview. So of course, for encoding patterns and different shades of brown, for example. But I think we will come back with a better answer in a few months. Because in 2 weeks I will be back to Leiden, so we will have time to work on it better. And I don't want to tell you something that is maybe not so. I don't know. I prefer to wait for a while.
Exciting. Thanks.
Andrew?
Thanks, Martha. Thanks, Cecilia. I really appreciate the talk. It's really nice to see this kind of work being done in this part of the world. I think it's super important. I think that there's a lot of rich insight that can be gained. I wonder, I'm thinking about in Gorba, for example, there are a lot of different words that would describe patterns according to where the color or the hue is on the body of the cow. And I wonder, are there any indications that this is a pattern that Maasai people will use to describe cattle? So for example, if there's a white mark on a black cow on its head, or for example, on one of its front legs, it will receive a certain name. Is there any indication that this is something that Maasai speakers do as well?
There are some terms. For example, there is one that is in this case is a noun, and is ortapa. Ortapa is the term for millet. And so there is this expression for ortapa aras, which means the millet on more on the belly, and it's a color plus pattern term, but because it means that the cow has just one circular spot, which is brown, like a finger millet grain on the belly of the cow. So this is really specific for both the place where the spot is and the color as well. Usually, if a certain color is on a certain body part, there are expressions like the cow that is black in its head, or the cow that is white in its tail. And also these expressions are really they're, I think, the most common. Because usually for pattern, what is in the analysis that I'm doing, they are more related to the longitudinal, or so how they are distributed in the body, and the color combinations.
That's an interesting distinction, whether it's longitudinally or latitudinally distributed. I didn't think about that being a criterion. Very cool. Also neat that it's the word for millet. Given that all the time, I mean, we think about Maasai people as being not farmers, but as you've argued with the Arusa, there's a really intimate connection with this sort of quote unquote mixed way of life. Quite cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I don't remember the word in Ma, but will you go back to the light blue? Because I was really interested in the chips that the woman chose. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have an idea about this? I don't know. This is really an open question to me, because this term, I could not find it. I mean, it's not Swahili at all, because I never heard about Burtutu. And I was wondering if it can be like a loan word from other languages in the area. But it's a really an open question, because it's really like restricted in its semantics and also in the reference, because it's just used by women just to encode this light blue. For example, on my beats here, they are Burtutu.
Cecilia,
Yeah.
does Maasai have long vowels?
No.
Okay, it would be interesting to see what they do with
Ambu.
what what they do with long vowels in borrowings, and then I mean, there's only a couple steps there. If T is some sort of excrescent or some sort of structure fixing, well, it would have to be a structure fixing consonant to fix that long vowel. L to R, sure. I mean, why not? And then that second two at the end, maybe it's just, I mean, it could be based on blue, but it would be a very fancy way of changing the word for blue. I'm just throwing something out here for you to look at.
Yeah, but the point is also that there is Maasai people use Bulu, like from Swahili content. So there are both, and the women distinguish between Burtutu and Bulu. So yeah.
I was actually wondering about the chips, because the chips the woman selected, a lot of them were not light blue, and so I was curious what you think might be going on with the category there.
I think in that specific case was related also because she didn't know how to name like the more purple one, and so she decided to group them with the Burtutu. But when I asked her to name the best example for Burtutu, she told me that the best example was the light blue one. So yeah. The problem also with the coloring, the color chip naming task, that is, I think it's interesting to start to collect terms and to analyze them. but is that sometimes, even if I told people to avoid to describe chips that they didn't not know, for example, but sometimes they just tell me, oh, this is this color and that color and blah, blah, blah. And then at the end of the task, sometimes they told me, but this is not the color I told you. So like, okay. Yeah. So I think in this specific case, it was, yeah, due to this.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Consultants being sort of overly cooperative.
Yeah.
Are there any additional questions for Cecilia?
And thank you thank you, Bonnie, for your advice here. Burtutu. Yeah. In general, if you hear something like Burtutu, let me know.
All right. Thank you. I think those are all of the questions and comments for today. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that recordings of all of the presentations in the Rift Valley webinar series can be found on the Rift Valley Network YouTube page, and entries for each presentation are added to the Rift Valley bibliography. I would like to thank Cecilia again for her presentation and everyone else for participating today. I hope to see you again at our next webinar.
Thank you. Thank you so much.